Good afternoon, everyone. It's Wednesday, May 17th, 2023. The time is now 3:37. I call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting of the Birmingham City Council. Councilors, you have in front of you the minutes from our previous meeting of April 19th, 2023. Could I have a motion and second for approval of those minutes?
I move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Minutes are approved. We do have 3 items on our agenda for today, and I will just call them up in the order that they are listed. This was one presentation that we asked to return to us concerning our facade improvement program, and our presenters this afternoon are Dr. Megan Venable-Thomas and Mr. Corey Stallworth of the Community Development Department. And we've been asked to ask you to kind of stand close by the table.
Chair right here, these 2 chairs.
No, she don't. Wait.
Both sides.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Wait, just a second.
I think we did.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
We did. All right, thank you very much. We actually have those in our packet. If you hadn't made any changes, was the original one. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. And I know that you presented some of this information to us before, but could you just give us an overview of that program, and then we'll go back in just for refreshment, and then we'll see if there are any questions.
Yes, we can give you a high-level overview. So the facade improvement program is actually funded with CDBG funds. And so it was a pilot program that was initiated in 2020, October of 2020, and it was initially seeded with $250,000 of CDBG funds. And every year thereafter, we make the same allocation, of course, based off of you all's approval. And so up until this date, we probably have processed about 10 projects and provided awards. But the awards are a maximum of $50,000. And so we normally allocate project awards based off of a formula, which is we provide $20 per square foot of facade improvement area. And that's how we get to the allocation that's needed. But our maximum allocation is $50,000. And so this is for the exterior facade of businesses. And so it cannot be used for anything inside of the business or landscaping wise, but mostly windows, doors, signage, and exterior paint. Also, the business owner has to commit to creating a full-time employment position, as well as retaining that position for the life of the forgivable loan. And so for every $35,000 allocated to the business owner, they have to create a full-time employment opportunity. And so our allocations are, of course, they're a grant, but they're in the form of a forgivable loan. And that is because that allows us to put restrictions and liens on the property in case that the owner defaults. But the owner makes no payments for the 5-year period. They just have to ensure that they're maintaining the look of the facade, as well as we have to recertify every year that they have these positions in place and that they are made available to low to moderate income individuals.
Thank you very much.
And we also do have target areas for the program, which are mostly our neighborhoods that already had a lot of the older historic commercial corridors, like Pratt, North Birmingham, some off of, I believe, Tuscaloosa Avenue. And so it's really to target areas like that to bring investment back. But if there are projects outside of those investment areas, we still look at those and approve those as well. We're looking to form a review committee as a part of this so that these applications can be competitively scored. And so in the future, we saw it fit for this program to really move towards IEO, as they already have a pipeline and the capacity to really work with the individuals and provide technical assistance, and properly vet the individuals. And so we plan to move the funding to IEO and allow them to work with the business community to allocate these loans in the future.
Thank you very much. Counselors, are there any questions regarding this project or this program?
So
Dr.
it's
Quinn?
just a general presentation, you guys
Yes.
aren't asking us to take any action.
I think the only action is when they actually have the applicant come before you that is approved for the facade program.
Which we do have some that will be on the agenda for budget and finance next Monday. I think we have probably about 3 or 4.
It was just, it seemed like the council was very
Sure. Yeah,
positive of the program, wanted to understand the dynamics of it.
yeah. So I think we recently approved some, and remarkably, I went by some of those locations and they were already done.
Yes,
I just
so,
wanted to point that out.
I got you.
Yeah, maybe we can get a little earlier on the pipeline.
We got you.
So, Dr. Thomas and Corey.
Yes, Counselor Tay, go ahead. You're good, you're good, go ahead.
It's the, so the information is, the program is open, and taking applications, right?
yes.
And so do we have any, information that we can disseminate through the neighborhoods, like, to people that are in?
Yes, we do have our policies and procedures. And Portia, our project manager, she'll pass that out. And so that is something that they can look through to see if their project is eligible. And I believe it should have the link to the application online so they can go on and create a profile and put in an
And
application.
one other question, what about Carline, in First City,
Is that a target area? Because
and you talking about that, you know, with Jason's, the restaurant Jason's?
yeah, that is an eligible area. I don't think it's one of our target areas, but if there's a business owner that's interested, they can apply.
I think Jason's would benefit from this. And the dog hunts, like, I want into this college.
Perfect, that was gonna be, yes, I just said that for the record so they know who's speaking. I agree with you, that was gonna be one of my questions, if you all don't mind, I'll go ahead and piggyback on Councilor Tate's question. It's just how would a business know that this project is out there? Because we don't put out RFPs, it's meant, or they have to come to us.
Yes, it's
For
on a
this
rolling
opportunity.
basis, and our link to our application is online. But that's one of the reasons why we wanted to move it to IEO, because they're better at marketing to the business community. And so they already have the listserv of people that they can email, so we think that they'll be able to take the marketing to the next level.
It also allows us to combine our different types of resources, so places that they're investing in, businesses that they're building their offerings through some of the BOLD grants or other things like that that also might need a facade improvement or a small business loan. We really want to be able to be as effective as possible with all of our resources and tools, and so we felt like working with IEO from those conversations, and because of the deep knowledge and access that they have to that community, that they can really facilitate this opportunity in a way that can be most impactful. And obviously, we still manage it because it is a HUD federal grant program and loan program, but we'll be working with them to help lead and support that program.
Perfect. Any other questions, Councilor Quinn?
Yeah, so can you speak a little bit about our recent rejected application for new market tax credits and how this is tied to that?
I cannot speak to the new
I
rejection
can
of the
kind of speak to it. Usually that's Corey as a housing, he runs our application for those, but as Mr. Stallworth said, these are forgivable loans, which goes into our application when we do apply for new market tax credits. So the more the things that we can offer to businesses and small business or whatever that we do, that it's a forgivable loan, that is one part of the application process that we can add to when we fill out for our next run for the new market tax credits. even though they may seem small, they still add to the validity of the actual application.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that, you know, was cited in our application as a deficiency, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So we're trying to be very intentional to start doing more things that have that forgivable loan aspect of it. Even with the BJCTA, we can kind of tailor our next contract with them as a forgivable loan because we're actually offering a service to the community that they don't have to pay back to the city.
Yeah, so that was gonna be my next question is like, in terms of, you know, having a successful application for those new market tax credits, you know, what are they wanting to see from us in terms of, you know, our level of commitment
Yes.
towards these types of forgivable loans? I mean, do they give us some sort of?
Yeah, IEO has an outline from the last application that we didn't successfully get, so, and I don't want to misspeak for IEO, but I think that is very good for us to have a conversation with the council so you can understand the expectations that when we bring these type of things to the council, it actually helps us for the future application. So, Madam President, if you want us to add that to the next committee of the whole, just to understand how new market tax credits work. I know we're getting off the subject just a little bit. It's very important.
It gives us something to have an opportunity to talk about in the future meeting. So if it's okay with the council, I would like to have that added. So we'll add
Yes, ma'am.
that.
I will say, in that realm, we do have the opportunity to expand the pool of funding that we have for this particular program. We base it off of the amount of applicants we've gotten, really the demand, but if demand increased, and we, you know, working with IEO found that we wanted to increase that pool, we could. Now, I will say that then would maybe take away from the pool of other programs, so we might need to decrease the allocation towards something else. But that is an opportunity as we're thinking strategically about what our goals are.
So just to kind of circle back, this isn't really a handout. We have a requirement that they create an FTE for each
Yes.
35,000
Yes.
of project. So maybe a FTE and a half for a full-scale $50,000 project.
That's right.
Yeah, so there is some direct return on investment.
That's right.
Hey, thank you. Any other questions?
Just,
Yes, Ms. Abbott?
these, obviously this program is only for certain areas of town. Once those areas of town, I guess, are fixed up, is this going to move to other areas of town?
Well, right now it's for the entire city. Those are just priority areas. And so
So
anyone,
anybody can
yes,
apply?
that's correct.
Okay. so that's-
And we have approved outside of those priority areas facade grants as
I
well.
thought Woodlawn was, I'm sorry. I thought Woodlawn was one of the priority areas. I know we approved some facades in Woodlawn, but then I thought it could be contained one of these that's listed.
No, you're right. We have approved some that are outside of these priority areas, and they're really, again, just a guideline, not a requirement to specifically focus there. So if we have applications that are really solid and are able to meet all of the requirements, then we recommend the approval to you all to support them.
Okay, and one of them, if it's in a historic district, I assume that they have to restore the facade to the historic appearance,
Yes,
rather than just
absolutely.
who do it up.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I did have one follow-up, and I believe you already said this. So part of the qualifications or part of the review of the application, it does include the design review committee. Let's say if you had, over in Osmore Valley, we have that particular committee that they look at facades and anything we put over there. So would that come under the
Yes.
guidelines?
So if they're located in an area that's in a dedicated commercial district or design review district, they would go through that committee's process. And we're looking to stand up an internal design vetting committee that can even look at these projects beforehand. And we're also bringing on an urban designer that has a background in design, so that we can already nip, some of these projects in the bud if the design is not aesthetically pleasing or matching what the community would like to see.
Very good. Yes,
So the
Council Tay?
technical support will be for people that get the facade grant,
Yes.
to help them, like, improve the facade.
Yeah, and navigate them through how to submit the appropriate documentation for the application.
So the technical support be ongoing or just be a one-time, with the urban plan?
So it will be at the forefront of the project when it comes.
But this will be an employee in our department, so they will always be available to the residents of the city of Birmingham.
So like Councilor Quinn said, the FTE and a half, the full-time and part-time person.
And so is it up to a certain amount or?
Up to 50,000.
Any other questions? Well, thank you all so much for taking heed to our questions earlier and just our interest in this program. And so I believe as we see these move across our agenda, we will have more opportunity to understand what this process is and can really look at them as they come before us. And we'll have these guidelines and we'll be looking to be sure that they meet those qualifications. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have on our agenda, we have working very diligently on the solid waste ordinance that we have for the city of Birmingham. And so we have to tell us about this process is Josh Yates, Director of Public Works, and Attorney Julie Bernard, Assistant City Attorney of the OCA. Thank you all so much. Yes, we just say. Watch your step. Well, as you probably are well aware, this is very important and has been really anticipated by members of the council and I'm sure residents. And so let me start first before we even go through the changes for the work that you all have invested in this to ensure that our ordinances are up to date and have the teeth that we feel we need in solid waste management. So I'll just turn it over to the two of you if you'll make the presentation for us and then we'll follow with questions. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Council President and Committee Chair. Council members. Thank you. So this ordinance is before us today. I came before you at the end of 2022. Several items were discussed at that point in terms of how we want to move forward in terms of code changes. We did have some suggestions. I know Councilor Quinn, you mentioned one, limiting households to 2 carts, items of that nature. So what's in here and what's reflected in this ordinance, I'm going to go through just the high areas again, just to reiterate those. It's only what's in the cart, no private carts, only picking up what's in the cart that we provide, as well as no bags beside it. Additional carts would be at a cost of $120. And that would include, the way you wrote it in this ordinance would include, that would be the cost of the cart, delivery, and service for 1 year. Thinking of sustainability and long-term, it gives us 12 months essentially to decide if we wanted to enact a fee for any extras, not necessarily the single-family residential across the city, but any extras, any businesses or fees associated therewith. That would be $120 would be what would cost for an entire year of service, cart, and delivery. Looking at the next item is garbage bag. That's an item that we remain in there. Removal from the curb within 24 hours after service. We also had theft and replacement being the cost of the citizen. There are some items there that would, if we damaged it or something like that, that would be something that would come back through a claim portion or through another sector from legal. Also, we talked about multifamily. It's defined in here. Multifamily is defined as 4 units that will service up to instead of 10. 10 units is a lot of units to service in carts, and really should have a dumpster at that point. Additionally, with multifamily units, The first one, just like a single-family residential, we provide the cart. If they have 2 units, they would need to purchase a second cart. If they have 3 units, they'd need to purchase 2. 4 units, they need to purchase 3. And so it would be a cost associated with each unit they're in. Also, the cost is $120 per business that's associated with it. So the reason that's important and the reason we've got a lot of similar costs coming in is that on our cart routes that we're running today, there are businesses. We're finding out a lot of things as we roll these out. A lot of areas we've serviced in the past, a lot of areas maybe we shouldn't have serviced, and we're working to change that as we move forward. So as we're going through this, if a business isn't given a cart, right now the carts are designated for single-family residential. And our trucks are picking it up with an automated arm. They go by a business and they don't have a cart. Now I have to send a different type of truck out there to go get it. So it kind of defeats the purpose on the efficiency side if they aren't carted as well. So there's things that we've seen as we've rolled this out that we wanted to implement, and that's one of the major items we've seen is allowing the businesses, small businesses, on our cart routes that we currently provide service to, or have provided services to for years, to be able to purchase that cart to continue service. So those are the main items I had in here. Was Julie, did you have other items you?
I think, just any questions, that y'all have. Again, I've tried to give you a roadmap as to where this came from, because there are existing provisions here. There's an ordinance that Councilor Smitherman has been asking about, related to some other issues, and that has been worked into this. That, there may be a few changes to things that were already existing in the ordinance, like the time to set them out. Talked with Director Yates about that, and currently the ordinance says you have to bring your cans back in by 6 p.m. the night of the service, but we talked about that could be not practical if you work. Sometimes they're running late on routes, it's not picked up till later. So it's just basically, and I think that's the way it is on most places that have uniform carts, it's 24 hours to get your cart back in. And again, just, primarily I don't know what y'all want to discuss, but we did, as Director Yates pointed out, reduced the number of units for multifamily dwellings, and did the business. We talked about multiple times about downtown areas, and we do pick those up. And I think one thing to stress about the businesses that would get the carts, those would only be ones that don't have more than 2 carts worth of garbage once a week. Because they're not going to go back out and pick those up every day or anything. But we still have areas where we are servicing downtown. This ordinance is emphasizing that paper and plastic bags have to be inside the carts, but there is still going to be some transition, in areas where we don't have cart service at this time until we work some of that out. But But we have a date of November 1st in here that if you're on a cart service, you can't put anything out in a bag at all. So, one point is to have, in what's being called now Section 4329, which gives the director or his designee some ability to have some policies. There are already some policies out there. There's already some list of materials that are not acceptable for collection and things like that. That would give him the ability to work within what y'all enact as an ordinance to have certain specific things, and this would require if there's any rules or guidelines or anything like that, that they be kept in Public Works and the clerk's office, and also give some ability to grant sort of a variance where, because we know there are places that may require a dumpster, but it would be impossible to have a dumpster or get a truck in to pick it up. I know of one apartment complex I've seen pictures of on South Side that they put out they have commercial service, but they put out carts. So that would enable some flexibility. And we're saying we're only gonna pick up at quadplexes. I know we have some where houses have been converted to 5. You know, if they can use 4 carts, we may wanna, you know, because they don't really have room for a dumpster, we may wanna continue to service that. It's just, you know, if it's something that we can make minor adjustments, if it's gonna create a problem.
All right, well, thank you for that overview. I know we have questions, so I'll just start with who would like to begin with the questions. Councilor Pro Tem?
Yes, I have a question about the citation. How much is the fee? Like, what's our approach for that? Because in addition to that, I know I've heard from other councils, people are leaving their carts in the streets. So what are we going to do about addressing that? Because that's a hindrance to DPW, the residents. What are we doing about that? And what's our approach with, I guess, well, that may not be a question for you, code enforcement.
Yeah, well, and that is in the section that I was just referencing, there is authorization for Public Works to hang, you know, put a notice or something at a property. Say somebody doesn't set something out right, and so they don't pick it up. Well, we're gonna get calls, but if we put a notice that says, you know, you didn't prepare this correctly, so it was not collected, and this is how you have to do it if we're gonna pick it up, you know, next time. Some of that would be able to help educate people and let them cure. Now, as far as actual violations, none of our civilian people have ability to write citations. So it would have to be a summons to municipal court, and it's up to $500. Now, I haven't looked at the current summary disposition of fines, which is in section 8310 of the city code. That is where the council has set fines where somebody can go resolve a ticket, a citation, without having to go to court. You can do it like it's a non-traffic citation. So there may be some provisions in there we need to go back and visit that. And that's if there's some things that we want to make, it's just pay it like a traffic ticket, we can do that. But that requires a law enforcement officer to write those citations, so.
Okay. Because I just don't want us to do this and y'all just get work and then people are still doing what they're doing now and make our neighborhoods look bad. And we may not be as prepared for really addressing this type of crime. Because I know I see it all the time. I know we get the calls, and honestly, it's really frustrating. The fact that people disrespect the city code, and then we get blamed for other people's actions.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure we're prepared when November 1st comes, which I don't mind a notice, but, you know,
Yeah.
there are some people who they're still going to do wrong at the end of the day, even if you put 10 notices on their properties.
There will be, yeah.
We've got folks that are out also. We've got door hangers, several thousand printed out. They're bright orange, and they're dropping them off as well when they find them. And we're also running our routes with their supervisors are checking our routes and trying to tag those properties, make sure they understand that they, you know, here's the items, and it has a checklist on the back. Either you had items sitting inside the cart, you didn't bring your cart back in from the curb, and so they're dropping those off as well. We did receive one update or recommendation that have also a Spanish translation, and so we're working on that as well for the next batch we have printed. But we're doing that as well as, I know we did our instructional video, and we're going to try and do more education and outreach towards that too.
Do we have just two more. Will that slow down trash pickup with them putting the door hangers? I know it doesn't take a long time, but, okay.
He said the supervisors are the ones that
I
make.
just want to ask, you know.
No, that's what I was just confirming what he said.
That's my other one.
I
How can
will.
we help you all with that? Because I don't know if as councils, we can go to neighborhood meetings and pass it out and talk to the neighborhood officers, or I know Councilor Quinn tried a couple of years ago to convert it to Spanish. Is there any way we can help you all, or can we be more proactive in that process?
So I wouldn't be opposed to providing more of the handouts and things of that. We have already translated the letter, even the letter that goes to the residents that speaks on the day of service. We went ahead and made that translated as well, so we front and back. That would be something that I wouldn't mind, buying.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for this, especially Attorney Bernard. I think we've been trying to look 2 or 3 years to get this ordinance before council. I'm very excited about this. I think this is a game changer.
I will mention there are some of the provisions, in the existing code and that are translated over here are on the disposition table, so we can revisit all of that, see what we want to do with them.
Yeah, because I want to have something where we tell them the actual fine, so people can know you're not going to get like a $5 or $10, $15 fine like it's traffic.
And it's when you pay, it's like a traffic ticket, you have to pay court cost on it, so it may be a 60, like I'm looking at one that's a $60 fine, but they're probably going to have to pay close to a couple $100 in court cost.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great deterrent, because we all know when you think about parking in that handicap parking spot, you're gonna think about how that's gonna affect your purse, so, or your pocket. So I think the more that we make this knowledgeable to our residents, the more there'll be adherence to it, and just the awareness. Any other questions? I know there's several.
I have one.
Yes, Counselor Moore? You know, I hesitate. You know I did.
So I see where it says that a person shall not remit any can or contain to.
Okay, just want to follow with me.
So section 4-3-14 on page 6,
Thank you.
last paragraph.
The Lord don't want you to talk about this. I said the Lord don't want you to talk about this.
So I bring it up because I know I have a couple of seniors who have pretty much said like, hey, me dragging this cart back and forth, is a challenge. And so I just kind of leave my cart there on the street, and I put my trash inside of it that way. And so,
So if there's a challenge with service or getting that car to the curb, we have what's called set-out service, and we really don't mind. We are, all our districts individually handle them right now. We may look at changing that and just having a crew designated for set-out service, but right now we have a very low volume. So each district handles their set-out service. But if they request a set-out service for 311, they will get the information back in a packet that they can fill out. And the supervisor will go to their site, meet with them, visit with them, and find out where they can put their garbage, and we can come by once a week and pull their garbage off their porch, so they don't have to leave that car down by the curb.
And actually the 8 to 5, there's 2 things. If, on the uniform cart pickup, they have to put it out the night before, but no later than 6 a.m. the morning of pickup, and then they have 24 hours to get it back in. The 8 and 5, that is really targeted towards like the downtown areas where we pick up at night. So that wouldn't be
That's part section B.
yeah,
Oh,
the
it's
B.
the A and the B.
Yeah, the B. The B is where if the pickup is regularly made after 5 p.m. before one day and before 3 a.m. of the following day, which would be the downtown and those areas. And so that's not to allow it. We know we've got some businesses, restaurants downtown that only serve lunch, breakfast and lunch. And so a lot of times they're in conflict with this, but that's going to have to be some of the overall how we figure that out. But this would not apply to those seniors. They would have 24 hours to get their car back in.
okay. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
And then I guess the only other thing is, you said that currently businesses would have to request to get a car. They would have to
Purchase one.
purchase one.
Yes, sir.
And I guess it's technically not purchase, but it's pay a fee to the city that offsets the cost of the city buying that car. The carts will remain the property of the city. And if the person moves, then, or the business closes, they leave the cart there for the next occupant, or I guess with the business, we'll bring it back. We're gonna work up a form quickly to allow, to get all this where people can apply for it, so.
Thank you. Anything else? I think I have a question. Ms. Savage?
Yes, and I apologize to Julie, I accidentally sent her my suggestions before they were finished, and I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay.
Anyway, my first question is, we say that the carts have to be removed, no later than 24 hours after. Removed to where? Because if we don't tell people, they're gonna have them in the front yard. Because it's convenient. So
Yeah.
where are we gonna tell them to take them? Are they take them beside the house, in the backyard, in the garage, out of sight, out of mind? You know, we need to say, I
Okay,
believe, because if we don't say, they're gonna be
everywhere.
all over the place, and our neighborhoods will still look ugly. We have some of our Airbnbs that we love so much, and they just keep a row of 4 garbage cans out in front of the house 24/7. You know, they don't care because they don't have to live there. They don't live here. And so that specifying what they have to do with their can, I think is important. And then in our definitions, which is like page 2, 3, 4. We don't define trash and garbage. We define garbage, and we define rubbish, which is a term we don't use. So could we standardize on the terms we actually use? Because if people are used to garbage pickup and they're used to trash and brush pickup, why the heck are we putting rubbish in there?
Because rubbish has always been in the ordinance. Trash has never been in the ordinance.
Okay, but we need to pick one.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's have rubbish and brush pickup, but let's standardize on something and actually that people use. I mean,
Yeah.
if the residents are used to it and then you throw a new definition on them, they're like, well, where does that go?
Yeah.
And then we say that you can put garbage and rubbish in your cart. I thought rubbish was trash and it was picked up separately. So we've told people they can put the same stuff in both places, and that's confusing.
Well, the ordinance has always defined yard rubbish. I think what you're referring to as brush has always been defined in the ordinance as yard rubbish. And that's one, you know, it's grass cutting, small brush, tree trimmings, hedge clippings, leaves, pine straw, and similar materials. So that has always been part of the city's code, that definition.
Yeah, but I'm just
We've
saying,
never
if
defined
we're-
brush.
If we're fixing
Mhm.
the code, let's fix it so that it's logical. That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Let's do what the citizen, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
everybody knows now we call yard waste and concrete block and other kinds of stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. We call it trash and brush. But now we're calling it rubbish, and then we call it yard rubbish, and we don't use those terms with real people, we just use them in our ordinance.
Well, that's because nobody's been referring back to the ordinance and using the correct
Yeah, but
terms,
we're gonna
so.
start doing that. So I'm just saying, let's make our terminology match what we actually use.
That's fair.
I mean, that-
It is, there, and I will say, the garbage and the rubbish definitions are from state law, dealing with solid waste management. There is no definition of trash. Trash is not defined. And it is, I mean, trash does go in garbage bins. Garbage is putrescible waste. It's food and things like that that are going to rot.
That's garbage.
That's garbage, right. But you also, when you put your garbage out, when you put your cart out, you're gonna have paper and things like that that is not putrescible. That is rubbish, and that has always been part of the garbage collection program. And the city has always had the sections that talk about how you prepare your yard rubbish for collection. We can make changes, but that's the legacy, that's what it's always been. It's just because people use other terms colloquially, that's not how the city has defined it and how the operation is. And we do have a reference, there are sections that reference bulk trash pickup, I think is the way it's worded, as bulky. You know, we talk about bulky items, it may not say trash, but we say, you know, removing bulky items. So we've not defined that, but that would be where people putting out furniture or, you know, whatever thing, the bulk items that we pick up. I don't think that's specifically defined, so.
Well, I just want normal residents to be able to tell what we're talking about. If they go online and they read our ordinance, it would be nice for them not to be confused and for us to use the same terminology on our website that we use in our ordinance so that people can just understand. I mean, it's not rocket science, it's just language, but language means something. And I just want them to be able to read it, and I want people to know where to take that can, because they're gonna leave them out there if they're too heavy. And then, one other thing is, is there any possibility of having any smaller cans than 96 gallons for people who would not fill up a 96 gallon in 3 weeks? Because like an older person who lives alone is not going to produce these voluminous amounts, and they might be able to tote their cart if it was a 76 gallon instead of a 9, if it was smaller and movable. And I have to assume the truck could pick it up as long as it had that bar on it. I just wondered, and it may be as we go down the road,
Yeah, I think just let us investigate that a little more, because I think our arms are fitted for the 96 gallon.
And that's the only one.
And, it kind of takes us away from the word uniform if we start doing different sizes.
Okay, I'm gonna be quiet until words.
I do think, though, you brought up a good point of how as we educate our residents, we stay within the terminology of our ordinance, and then it's an education for all of us. What we're picking up.
It's a
actually
change of
means.
mentality that
Yes,
we're trying to.
Definitely. And then I think the more that people realize we have these defined notions or defined statements of what we're picking up or what we're even setting out, it makes me more knowledgeable of, before I get ready to go out there and put that sofa out there, we know.
We don't want that sofa.
And we don't want that sofa. The mattress.
We don't want the mattress.
We're looking for mattresses in.
Well, and we've had a couple of toilets.
Those just
so-
bulky items.
They love the toilets too. All right, and then there was one other item that Council Adams brought up. I fit that category of the older person that doesn't generate a lot of trash, okay? And, trash can's about as tall as me, but that's my problem, not y'all's. But I do value the fact that you got the opt-in set-out program. And maybe as we go about and evaluate this and make more residents aware who are having those problems with those containers, that they've got that set-out service that can be, they can opt in on. So, I tell the story all the time. After I started living in my mom's house, they kept picking up the trash, and I thought, isn't this wonderful? And then I realized they stopped it when they kept seeing me come out the door. It's like, she could take her own trash. So it's a wonderful feature for the city to have, but again, educating residents on how we can utilize it. So that's something else maybe we can monitor as we look at other ways we could benefit our residents. Thank you. Councilor Quinn, I believe, been chomping at the bit.
Yeah, sorry. So tell me how this addresses the perpetual brush and rubbish pile. Number one, that's one issue that I think everybody has in their district, is the pile that just, is there every day. That folks just do tree trimmings or furniture or whatever, and they just set it out at the curb whenever they feel like it, regardless of when it actually gets picked up. And so that's my first question, is how the changes addresses that. And then the issue related is the issue of when landlords do evictions and they put their person out on Monday and they're there at Tuesday morning setting all of their possessions out on the street.
Okay, that is not addressed because really a lot of this is addressing, our collection, what we're required to do. landlords are, should be responsible for the disposal, and that's something we can, we've worked, when we had the coordinated code enforcement meetings going on, we had some things coordinated to work with that, to work with the sheriff's office and get at least advance notice. I've had, an email one time about somebody had, evicted or foreclosed or something, and it was a house with a little small yard, and they filled up the entire yard, and this was before Director Yates, and we were out there, we got complaints, we're gonna go respond out when people complain, but I told them, here's the multiple, they were like, we need an ordinance to address this. I listed like 5 violations that were going on and why we shouldn't be picking that up, and why they should have contacted the owner of that property and said, if you don't have this in 24 hours, we're gonna go get a warrant, a municipal court, and we're gonna deal with that. We've got to enforce what we've got on the books. We've got to get better coordination, on the enforcement, and we can look at putting something in. We want to get this moved, as quickly as we can. We're hoping, I'm dropping this as it is today, but we can make some of these changes, in the, before the agenda goes out on Friday, so we can look at some of these definitions. But I think a lot of that about landlords is, already addressed in ordinances that we have on the books. It's just how we deal with them and re-educate, and we may need to put something in eventually, but I'd like to have a little more, leeway on discussing that and where we go with that, because technically it would violate, there's not supposed to put them out. We say when we're going to pick up bulky items, maybe we need to, it may not be, I have to look.
Do we have, does the ordinance include like when you can put out yard rubbish or?
I don't know that it does, so, we'll look at that and see if we can put something in about when you can put that out.
So I just want to note,
Yes.
because I know the conversation, I'm sorry, Madam President, because I know we're really just talking about the actual trash collection part of it, and I think that's a different category that we're working towards to try and finalize. I don't want to slow down her efforts to make sure that we get the trash part taken care of, but we will have made a note for the bulk trash and the landlord part of it, because to Ms. Bernard's, Attorney Bernard's point, we have reestablished our coordinated code enforcement so they can start working on revamping the ordinances and having more communication between the different sectors and different departments to try and strengthen our code enforcement efforts.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
So are we mandating that property owners use our cart?
Yes.
Yeah, so they can't go to Home Depot and buy a product that looks the same?
That's why we have the city seal on it.
Okay, all right. So I've got one situation, it's probably not unique, but in the Oak Ridge Park neighborhood, there's condos that when they were constructed, there was a condo association that was created there that the condo owners are supposed to pay a fee to the condo association to pay for garbage collection and other stuff. However, only about 40% of the property owners have actually paid into that. So the condo association is essentially defunct. Well, people are still living there, they still have trash. How are we addressing situations like that?
So, I think I know the condo association you're talking about. We've had a couple of them that have come up in areas that we technically should not have been servicing. We're finding things like that as we're rolling this out. When there's 90 units on a piece of property, we shouldn't have been servicing. We're driving on the private roads or private parking lots to pick up garbage with, a 12-ton truck. we shouldn't be servicing that, because if we damage those private roads, it goes back to liability issues. So as we're finding these things, we are working with the homeowners association and others that may be in charge, or maybe whoever we can find associated with it. I have reached out to those and told them that we will continue to work with them until they're able to find the private service or find a way to handle private service. There's a lot of options out there. They don't have to go with dumpsters. There's other companies that are willing to come in and do service just like we do, and pick up in a container. But when it comes to that, it was really outside of our ordinance, and some of those HOAs, even though they are defunct, some of them are still operating as well, or there is some opportunity there for them to re-engage their residents. But we've told them that we will continue to work with them until they can get their private service established. So we are still working with their homeowners association to pick up, still once a week, like everybody else in the city is receiving, that has the carts on those routes. But we are working with them.
Or in the meantime, until they can find a permanent solution, will they be provided the hand carts?
They have not been provided the hand carts, and that was solely because it was 90 unit. I believe that's the same one. There's two of them. There's one that's over 100 and one that's right at 90 units, and I didn't send them the carts because it's not single family residential. It didn't meet what we intend of the purchase of the carts, and so I didn't feel comfortable sending them out. Also, it was more than 10 units on one piece of property, which goes against the ordinance. So I just, when we found that out, I said we really shouldn't be servicing here. Let's make contact with them and see what we can do. In the interim, we've been picking up hand by hand once a week.
When Director Yates first made me aware of at least one of those situations, I looked at it, and it's, condos where they're like 4 units, like row houses, townhouses, and 4 units per grouping. And, of course, my first thought is, well, each condo is individually owned. But then when I looked at it, it actually doesn't comply with the ordinance, because the ordinance has always said, define premises as a parcel, or piece of property that's, with intent with dwelling units. And we say we don't pick up if there's more than 10 dwelling units currently on a property. And when I looked at it, it's one parcel with all these units on it, and so it doesn't comply with the ordinance. So,
It's a tough situation, but we're working with them to try and help them get to where they need to be on that.
Yeah, and getting back to Councilor Smoothman's question, just in terms of general penalties, for, I'm interested in us kind of spelling out what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I didn't, go through this word for word, top to bottom, so it may be, is there anything specific?
I did add a provision that says if you fail to do any duty, like where you're required to have a dumpster or whatever, if you fail to do that duty, or you violate, a provision, you don't comply with the provision, then it's punishable by the general provision in city code, which is 116. That's the way it would be anyway. Section 116 basically says that if you fail to do something you're required to do, or you do something that's not allowed, then it's subject to the penalty. The penalty is up to $500 per violation per day, and or 180 days in jail per violation per day. And that's the the maximum penalty that municipalities have for most municipal ordinance violations. I referenced the summary disposition table, which is at section 8-3-10 of the city code. And that is where the city has authority under the Alabama Rules of Judicial Administration to set fines for things that can be cited on either a uniform traffic ticket or a uniform non-traffic ticket. And we do have certain things that are set out in there. Of course, those are mostly going to be, like I said, it may be 60, maybe 100. maybe, you know, like parking tickets are in there, $15, you know, whatever. And except for parking tickets, you have to pay court cost, you know, along with paying the ticket, just like you would with a traffic ticket. You know, the difference is, do you want it something that somebody can go down to the magistrate's office, you know, go down to court and say, I plead guilty, and pay a fine and court cost, and they're done? Or is it a type of thing that you want them to have to go to court and have the judge determine a penalty within that 180 days? So,
After the second time, yeah. I don't want to be too punitive, but,
So,
because that's kind of harsh.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think since we're still in this phase of transitioning, trying to get people acclimated to the cart system, I hear you, and we want to comply to what, you know, the legislative body wants to do. But I think we need to have some kind of, you know, deference just to.
Sure, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, I 100% agree, but, you know, folks, I just know by observation that folks will take as much.
They'll take advantage of
as you give them, you know? So, one more question, I promise it's the last one. Do we have like a list of prohibited items, like mattresses, tires?
That cannot go in the cart.
Like,
For
we
any
are not
free-
going to pick up, period.
yeah.
Yes.
There, yeah, well, I will say, we have put in a provision, it's, section 4-3-15F. I'm looking at my marked up copy, so it's like on page 8, the clean copy. And that's one thing that we're saying, I know Public Works already has a list on this, these are things that would not go in the cart, but things that would be hazardous, dangerous, flammable, and we list things: propane bottles, tanks, fire extinguishers, oxygen tanks, fluorescent bulbs, etc. And there is a list of that prohibited waste. I think some of the things I'm hearing are concerns about bulk items that are set out, and if we, you know, I'll defer to Director Gates on that. If we don't, that would be something that he could have a list, but maybe we would want to spell out in here. And again, this can go forward, you know, just because you adopt an ordinance doesn't mean it's the end of it. We can amend, you know, along the way. I was also going to point out in that section following it, I did put in a provision G to address some of the concerns. It's already not legal to do, but this emphasizes it and puts it here. These places we know. I think it's mostly been probably in Councilor Abbott's district, maybe some, you know, Councilor Quinn's, where people build these wood frames out on the sidewalk and just leave their carts out there all the time. They say there's multiple reasons why that's already not legal, but this,
We never remove.
yeah, but this puts that, I mean, there are other places in the code that address that, but this puts it where it's there. It's collected into the same pots, so everybody sees it. So.
One more thing, I'm sorry. Just for the record, and I know we're not addressing it here, but I gotta say this, or my constituents keep calling me. On the issues of dumpsters, you know, we have some work to do. So,
I know.
especially in the downtown area, folks want to have like a QR code or something on the dumpster that they can use to, you know, contact the company and identify who's leased that dumpster and sort of, you know, be able to track down who to
Instead of calling
inquire
you.
with. Huh?
Instead of calling you.
Yeah, right now it's call me. But, you know, the same types of issues that we see happen with that we're concerned about with our carts happen with dumpsters.
And that, you know, there are provisions that have always been in the code that, you know, have not been dealt with, meticulously. And, one is you can't put an alley, a dumpster on the sidewalk, between the sidewalk curb in the right-of-way or blocking an alley without having first been granted a right-of-way use agreement by the council. We know there's dumpsters out there that, there's no right-of-way use agreement, pretty certain of that. So if they're gonna have a dumpster and it's gonna be in our right-of-way, not on their private property, but in our right-of-way, they must get a right-of-way use agreement, or else we could develop a program for permits, where the council has an ordinance and we, and it can be done administratively. But nobody has a right to just put a dumpster out on sidewalk in an alley or anything, period, without having that approval from the city.
Right, and then once it's full, you can't set garbage beside it or on top of it.
Yeah, and you can't, I've worked with a situation, somebody contacted, I wound up with a call that, they park in a parking garage downtown, and where the dumpster kept getting put, you couldn't see oncoming traffic to pull out. So, we had to work to get it removed. We've had situations that people have completely blocked alleys with dumpsters, and in the past, I've known of Public Works, we've had that dumpster pulled, and we'll tell the company, you can come get it at the landfill. It's sitting out at the landfill because it's blocking the right of way. You can't do this. So we can deal with that. And the other provision that's always been there is that they are required to keep the area around the dumpster clean. And, it, keep or cause to be kept free of garbage and rubbish, the area immediately surrounded the, the containers, I'm just going to generalize, and it should at any time become so littered, unclean, or unsanitary, and that person be so advised in writing by or on behalf of the Director of the Department of Public Works or the Health Officer of the county. That person shall within 24 hours thereafter place or cause to be placed that area in a clean, sanitary, and unlittered condition. And it's unlawful for anybody to fail or clean or cause it to be cleaned in that time. And each condition, each day, is a separate offense. So that's always been there. That's always, that's something that we need to make sure that, that we're addressing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Councilor Tay.
Just what I wanted to say, everybody pretty much has already said. What about these, and I hear what y'all was saying about, and these, I'm gonna jump on this dumpster situation, I'm gonna use Fountain Heights as a prime example. 'Cause we just got an email about an apartment complex in Fountain Heights yesterday. So what about these repeated offenders, all these people that have had multi-units in these neighborhoods for years? And can't nobody make me believe that these people are not aware of the ordinance for the city of Birmingham. What's the plan of action to hold them accountable? Because a lot of people are maintaining, they have property managers. And then like sending their residents letters and sending the property manager letter, sending the owner of the complex letters like, this is not gonna be tolerated. And it is just, again, a problem in our neighborhoods.
And that's something that we need, and I know what email you're talking about, and I have spoken with a couple of people about that. I was trying to figure out exactly what the situation was, and I'll talk with you, later about that. But that, again, is part of, improving our code enforcement procedures. And with all of this, I think probably we can develop standard letters that would be sent for those situations. They'll be given a time to get in compliance, and then we would begin proceedings. There are also situations where that might, become an issue to, to address their public nuisance abatement, or, So I'm talking with, the rest of the team in OCA. We'll, some of it may be case by case, but we'll work on that.
And then one final question, Madam President.
Yes.
And also, even though some of the cars have already been distributed, so was any of the cars go out, like, that you identify like who live in the residence, where they Spanish speaking residents, because I know I've gotten some issues and some complaints from some of the constituents that they tried to tell, their neighbors that, hey, you can't do this, but they don't understand what they're saying. So what's the plan of action to go back and send, maybe letters in Spanish speaking to where the carts have already been distributed?
So where the carts are already been distributed, we can look at that, especially with this Recollect program that we entered into contract with, Routeway and Recollect. We're going to be able to have a much broader notification system, and we'll look at that and see what we can do on the 44,000 carts that are already out there today. Moving forward, though, the next phase will have English and Spanish translations, because we don't know. We don't know, which household does speak English versus Spanish. But what we'll do is we'll look at that, and also, we're also in the process of reviewing our routes as well. And, as we optimize our routes, some of the days of service may have to change in order to optimize it. We're going to try and minimize that as much as possible. But when we get to that point, new letters will likely be sent out. Keep in mind, too, that the time of service changes a little bit. Running with the automated truck takes longer than running with the truck with the two people collectors on the back. So we get a lot of calls for missed garbage at 2 o'clock while the truck's still out till 5. So keep that in mind as well. But definitely we'll look at seeing if we can find a way to educate those residents.
So would it be helpful to, when you visit the next phase of distribution, to send the letter in both English and Spanish in the cart?
Yeah, he said it's on both sides, it's English and Spanish on the.
Next phase is addressed. Yes, ma'am.
Council Pro Tem?
Yes, Council Tate brought up a good point, because we've been on a lot of phone calls about that from our residents. But I was thinking if we could look at the census tracts, or even pass numbers to see which districts and neighborhoods have a huge Hispanic population at first, and so we can narrow down, so we know like districts 5, 6, 9. Do you have a lot of people, Hispanic people? So I kind of forward, like, it's hard to be like, hey, okay, and so we can narrow down, we can target those districts more, because I have quite a few Hispanic neighbors that don't. Yeah.
I think it'll help us if you just let us know that, because sometimes sometimes the census tract doesn't tell you before the store.
Or something with demographics.
I got you.
Yeah. And then with the set out services forms, I don't know if this is like a written rule, but like I've tried to get copies of them to give out to the elderly, and they wouldn't give it to me. They said that so because we were trying to give it, because a lot of times the elderly is a lot easier to give it to them, or we have to go there and help them get it. So can we have that ability to pass them out? Because I think that'll be a lot easier for them.
So the reason we've been reluctant to just hand them out is that I'm really pushing an accountability track. And so with our secret fix system, if it's requested through our 311, my Birmingham 311, not Birmingham 311, there's a record of that. And so it holds us accountable. I can see, where our customer service team has gotten requests where they've sent the letter out. So if we just hand them out, I don't know who has the paperwork. I don't know whether it's turned back in. There's really no record of it. But if it goes through my Birmingham 311, I'm gonna get it right. When it goes through that, I have a record of it, and so we can be more accountable towards it. Where if we're just handing out sheets, I'm not seeing them. Like, they're mailed in, who are they mailed to? Are they mailed to City Hall? Are they mailed to Public Works? Are they faxed somewhere? If they come through a fax machine, I don't have record of it. Somebody may pick it up with something else, on the printer. So it just gives us an accountability tool that I'm able to say, okay, well, we've got 447 requests that have come in for set out service, versus I don't know where we are in the process with this particular one. So that's why we haven't handed them out. But if we get the request, we'll be glad to meet. A supervisor actually physically goes to the residents, meets with them, talks with them, make sure there's nobody in the household that can actually take the trash out for them. So there's a process to it. And so that's why we try to be through that system, so we can make sure that we're getting what we need to, make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to do on our end.
Okay. Which I know I will take the extra initiative even to send you back the names. And I'm just saying, because I have a lot of elderly residents, and even if I have the option after I tell them, I'll go the extra mile for them instead of, because that could help us, but just know I'm here to help with that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and then, this is more a question as a small business owner downtown. So, because I know when we put out our trash, I never know where to put it. I'll put it by the trash can, y'all, so I'll do that. But, I mean, so how would that apply? So like, we're off of 2nd Avenue, for example.
So if it's a part of a residential cart route right now, that's really what this ordinance is geared towards. This ordinance doesn't really change anything about downtown
Okay.
pickup right now. I think we have options for that as we move forward. In my opinion, I feel like we should be looking at that as phase 4, potentially looking at businesses downtown as phase 4. If our teams are going to go down there and service them every single night, I feel like there should be a cost associated with that, and it should be in a cart so that the garbage is confined. It just leads into a lot better sanitary conditions and a cleaner downtown. That is not addressed in this ordinance, but it is something that we are planning to come back with you on once we get the residential carts rolled out. So the businesses in here are primarily businesses that are on residential cart routes.
Gotcha, okay. No, it's not every night, it's just, I just know, I just kind of put it beside the trash bin, so I've always wondered, where do I put it, am I doing right, so.
Well, what he's saying is that they're down there, they're downtown and in 5 Points South every night picking up trash.
They are.
Yep.
Night wing, white wing crew.
White Wing is during the day, but we still have a night shift.
Night shift.
Too. So we have a day shift that's the time.
I
and
seen
we
them
have a
during
night
the
shift.
day, okay.
They work different portions of downtown. It may be that they don't hit every business the same way every night, but there's a lot of businesses that we do hit almost every night.
Okay.
A lot of communities have a charge associated with per tip, just like a dumpster would have. So there's options to that as we get to that element. It's just not one we're ready to tackle in an ordinance form at this point.
Yeah, it's not nasty on the 2nd Avenue, I'm just wondering.
You're just asking where you should put it on the sidewalk, where's the best place for the
As long
crews
as
to
we
pick it
have
up?
clearance with the carts, but with trash, a lot of times it's just right, right there close to the curb, wherever they can see it.
Close, that's, close to the curb.
All right, well, thank you very much. Any other questions? I just have, pretty much, I'm like Councilor Tate, you asked about everything that I had a question about. I do want to know, as new neighbors come into an area, I would be remiss if I didn't speak of the conversation we had last night in Green Acres neighborhood, and just how our residents made aware of the cart system and what they should do and what's my day of pickup versus having to watch out for a week or more and see what happens. So I just want to ask, this is not a question, I just want to be sure our education piece is in place. And so you don't have this type of confusion, but is that something that we're expecting the neighborhoods to take on their own, or how do we communicate that?
I can tell you that the route wear and recollect system that we engaged in from the recycling and the waste perspective is going to make a world of difference in our communication and notification for our neighborhoods as we move forward. So one of the things we're kind of waiting on still is we're still waiting on final trucks to come in for the ASLs to roll out the last phase of residential. Once that goes out, then we can, they're already in the process too of optimizing the routes. We optimize the routes. One of the things I've charged them with is keeping all the neighborhoods together in a better fashion. Right now it's kind of spread out, the routes are spread out, so we're trying to consolidate so that we know if this route is down, it affects this neighborhood and this neighborhood, so that our notification system can go out more so. So I will say that once that piece is able to move forward, we'll be able to have a much cleaner and clearer notification system via social media or for any kind of flyers, newsletters, or anything that goes out, to be able to go onto the app or go onto the website or social media or anywhere to be able to see the days of service and when they'll be picked up and all.
Perfect.
It is generally, garbage collection is a utility. So the same as you get your power turned on, you know, whatever, your water turned on. When you move, you should be checking to see what is the garbage service in your
That's a
area.
responsibility back to the owner.
Mhm.
Thank you. And another thing that came up, and this may be a little bit outside of this, but what do we decide we're gonna call this? Bulk trash, rubbish? I'm for real. What are we gonna call it?
Bulk trash.
Bulk trash?
We're gonna put that on our website now, instead of trash and brush pickup, we're gonna say bulk trash. And then we're gonna define bulk trash so that
Right.
people know what bulk trash is, right?
Answer's yes, right? Come on now.
I know
Because, I mean,
that's semantics, but yeah.
Well,
I mean,
I've made notes, we'll go back. and-
We'll clean it, we'll clean it up.
Yeah.
The only reason I brought that up, another conversation was about and I just, you know, I'm receiving the notifications, but there's a lot of misconception that the bulk trash pickups are not announced. You know, the posting is not provided early enough for the next month. And so I've just been trying to work in my mind, how will our neighbors know when is their bulk trash day? Now, I spend time during the G7 comments, which probably no one is paying attention to, not wasting my breath, saying we've got bulk trash pickup tomorrow here, or, you know, next week there. But I'm just trying to come up with the concept, and I know we've kind of been slapped on the hands about using Everbridge, or using that because it's an emergency system, but I don't know if there's a way we could start saying, okay, your bulk trash pickup is next week, or your bulk trash pickup is tomorrow. But that's something to think about to make this more effective, but that's just thoughts I have.
That same system that's gonna help us with the garbage is gonna help us with the bulk as well.
I would
We're
love
gonna-
that.
it takes some time to get there, to get everything established, building the route, building the systems in the system. It takes a long time. And plus, we don't wanna start it and have half the city on twice a week
Correct.
pickup and half on once, so.
I can see that.
And we got equipment on the way
Yes.
that we're
Yes.
definitely in need of, so it's just, that's important to make sure that we're more efficient in the pickup times.
I don't know if y'all recognize, we talked a lot of trash last night. So this gives me a lot more information to bring back to the residents. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, Dr. O'Quinn?
Are we gonna have to do this amendment again when we do recycling carts?
Yeah, we're working through that because we really want to go into an opt-in program for recycling so we can actually optimize the routes of where we need to go do pickup for recycling instead of just having crews just kind of do like a Wells, weird Waldo search for recycling. So we're working through that part of it, yes, sir.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the council, I do want to thank you again, Attorney Bernard and Director Yates, for the work that you've done with this. You can see by the questions and the discussion, this is just very important to us as counselors, and I know our residents really, they want to comply. That's what I'm thinking.
No, we actually thank the council for the input because this helps us change the law to strengthen it and just get to a place where we're consistent. How about that?
And I will point out, you know, there weren't any questions about it, but this includes some of the provisions that we've been working on long-term about making it clear that contractors are responsible for having a way to collect and dispose of their trash. And even though it's somewhere else in the code, clarify about companies that do tree work and, you know, things like that. So, landscaping work or whatever. I mean, you can, homeowner, you cut down a bush and put it out there, that's fine, but this is clarifying that commercial entities are responsible for their waste.
Yeah, so when the tree's 30 inches in diameter, somebody will know that the homeowner
Did not cut that down.
Listen, they're all stacked on top of each other.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I said that we can still send additional questions to Ms. Bernard without having, we copy.
Just copy me.
And that makes it legal.
Yeah. But do send them, don't send them reply all.
Yeah, just
with everybody.
just streamline, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe we could copy.
Yeah, and I have my paralegal dropping this ordinance for Tuesday. I will work on tweaking some of the things that we've talked about. We'll talk tomorrow and see, you know, we're dropping it, but we can make some changes before the agenda goes out based on some of the conversation here.
So we better,
So do we need
Yes.
to recommend it out of committee or?
I think so, on this one,
It's fine, because it's already on, it'll be on the agenda, so that still gives us time to make any amendments and changes on the days,
we approved it out of
the
committee.
temporary days. Yeah.
Anybody want to make a motion?
yes, I'll make a motion that we recommend this to the full council with changes that were discussed at this meeting.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our last agenda item, well, next to last, we have on the new business, is a presentation by the Birmingham Jefferson County Port Authority by Executive Director David Russell. And Mr. Russell, I probably should have let you come before this one because we know we're going to have a lot of interest in that ordinance. So, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank y'all for having me today. It's always a pleasure. As you all know, the Port Authority was created from the council. So it's like we always come at home, kind of talk to our parents. And some of the best things you all can ever do for us is leadership. So looking at our second slide, you see a new face, Charles Williams. That's someone that Councilor Quinn appointed to the board. And having great leaders is more important than the funding, because without the great leadership, well, without the right leadership, we will not be able to deploy the funding as needed. So we want to appreciate you all for staying engaged, appointing great leaders to the board, and teams allow us to deploy our efforts. As for the quick history, we went on this several times. Just want to highlight, in one time in 2006, the port itself, one terminal alone, was handling between 12 to 13 million tons of throughput a year, which is a huge volume. And just as the BJCPA ecosystem, on the next slide, just kind of want to identify our purpose. A lot of people think, what do we do? What's our purpose? What's our goal? Our purpose is pretty simple: support economic development, increase tax revenue for the city, increase jobs for the citizens. Our goal is to be self-funding. We don't want to continue to have to rely on the city and the county and the state for funds. We do want to get self-funding. And throughout the presentation, you will see a project that kind of help us get to that point. And just to remind you all, we do have bond issuance authority. So once we get self-funding, we can activate that bond issuance authority and pretty much finance our own projects. The next slide is Birmingham Port Terminal. Just to give everybody an idea, a reminder how big this port is. It's 6 terminals, 614 acres, which is a lot of land, a lot of traffic out there. The current state, which is the next slide, is a study that Dr. Darabi did in 2021. And this is about 5% capacity, 2.2 million tons a year came through that year, 1,400 barges, 21,000 rail cars, it's 147 direct jobs, and that average payroll, the annual payroll is about $8 million a year. But 2023, this year, they're projected to be about 4 million, so almost double, and that's just because of the new activity with the coal. Our region is real privileged to have not just thermal coal, but metallurgical coal, and that's still a high demand across the nation. As for the next slide, the total economic impact, this is still based off that 2021 information. At 5% capacity, the economic impact of the port is $128 million. It's about 1,400 indirect jobs. So basically, when material arrives or import or export from the port, it has to go somewhere. So when we use barges and rail cars. So once you break it down into trucks, those are additional jobs that we create around the region that has to be supported, or it is supported through the port. That economic impact on that piece is $86 million in payroll. And Dr. Ravi also showed that for every dollar we invest in the port, it will generate an additional $4. And also an investment in the port will help out with new market tax credit. Because a lot of urban cities does not have a port. So just showing that on the application, identifying that, will support and make us more aggressive and provide us an advantage that a lot of other cities outside cannot have. But just looking at how we're located geographically, a lot of people don't even realize we have a port, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But as for the depot warehouse, the project, warehouse project, on the next slide, this is the P3 agreement we've been talking about for a while. We're still in permitting department. Our last obstacle will be trying to figure out the hydrogen. They need a fire hydrant out there. We're trying to figure out if they can use the water, possibly without having to do a whole nother boring up under the rails. That's going to be very expensive. In the last year alone, This tenant has already been paying on this loan, so on this lease, which is $40,000. So it has been paying off, so we have been receiving funds from this for the last 12 months. And just to get this project done, of course, we wanted a DEPA grant, but it was a reimbursement grant. So the county came back and gave us $840,000 for the bridge loan to put this deal together, so we could help create this partnership with this P3 group with WACO, and we have paid that loan back since then. So we are in great standing. So we're showing that, hey, we give some money, we can do what we say we're gonna do, and we will give it back to you. So that's a great, just a way of showing how other organizations have been working with us and bringing the county back to the table. The county previously has not been engaged, but just showing the board and having these conversations and coming to you presenting and coming up with an idea and a project and a way to fund it, they have believed in us and they have funded our ideas also. The next phase, once we do get this warehouse constructed, we'll love to expand it because it's nothing fancy. It's just our first project. It's 4 walls, a pad, no restroom, no office space, no overhead crane. We'd love to kind of expand this facility, add additional 50,000 square feet, and it turns like more of an intermodal facility. With this intermodal facility, we can be more efficient on the cargo that we process and diversify our cargo. That's another issue that we have. I'm going to kind of explain a little more. We're still in the bulk commodities and really trying to diversify the port. It's something we really need to focus on. But just to give you an idea of what this project will cost, it's about $19 million. It will bring in additional tonnage, about 187 to 200,000 tons a year. And just adding an additional 50,000 square foot to the existing building that we already have coming up in place, and our revenue about $1.7 million a year. And that's enough money to kind of service some debt and provide some revenue back to the authority. So we still can start issuing that bond authority so we can finance our own projects. And on the next slide, future project. This is something that we kind of want to assist the city in, removing blight, bringing more projects online. As of right now, from a whole as a state, Alabama has an all-time low inventory for product, for land, available land. So there's a lot of projects that come to Alabama, that come to Birmingham, that we cannot place because we don't have availability. And this Roundhouse Finley project is a prime example of what we can do, and especially since the governor expanded the Growing Alabama tax credits. So utilizing that, and she expanded to include port authorities. So utilizing that and understanding that that property is right off Finley, minutes from the interstate, is in the middle of the community, so there's a workforce right there that's available. I think the unemployment rate in that area is about 5% within a 20-minute drive of that warehouse. It's connected to the rail, and all the rail in Jefferson County is connected to the port, and it has access to a rail spur. So theoretically, a company can locate at the port and utilize this facility and never have to put a truck on the road, at least not initially. Maybe at the end for the final mile, because we just can't get around that. But putting this warehouse, or just having the site available so we can recruit different companies to come for advanced manufacturing, and leveraging the fact that we have 7 OEMs in the state, 13 OEMs in a one-day drive. In Birmingham, you can touch 35% of the country within a one-day drive. So just leveraging that, that's a huge selling point in itself. You see what's going on day in Payne, warehouses going up, and we can also do this on Finley and just kind of create a logistics hub with more opportunities.
Ask a question about that? So, it's really interesting, and, although, it's in an industrial area, the folks who are sort of rail aficionados, definitely know about the Finley Roundhouse. So there's like this whole, contingent of folks out there who've been interested in seeing this structure preserved, even if it means, putting it back into use. But it's very unique, there's not, from what I understand, there's not too many roundhouses left around the country,
Right.
So, but from that point of view, I think it may actually qualify for like, historic renovation tax credit potentially. I mean, I know those are extremely competitive, but it definitely, the growing Alabama tax credit, maybe the one that makes more sense, but in any case, I just wanted to throw that out there, that it's a significant structure, that, you know, a significant amount of people in the community care about and would like to see preserved.
Right.
And it's in District 9.
Not only do they like to see it preserved, and see grass.
Yeah, that's right.
Norfolk Southern heard from me last year.
Okay.
Miss Waters actually lives on that corner, and it was, you know, the grass is extremely high back there, so.
Yeah.
And they access their yard, there are older people that access their, you know, to go in their house to their backyard, so, I mean, you know, growing up around there, I remember the roundhouse, you know, being active, so.
Is it CSX or BNSF?
The Norfolk Southern.
Norfolk
They
Southern.
own, yes. And one time it was on the city condemned list. It doesn't have a roof on it now. So trying to revitalize, I'm not sure how much that would take. But of course, they still own the property. And we're just trying to entice them with growing Alabama tax credit to say, hey, if the Port Authority owns this property, we can apply for this tax credit and do something productive with this property. Something that'll put it back in purpose, something that'll allow citizens to have employment and create more taxes for the city, instead of just sitting as is, dilapidated, blight structure, housing vagrants. They're really just bringing it back to life and just bringing more traffic to that side of town. Another potential project we have is a spur extension. With a lot of the congestion on the railways, this would be an amazing opportunity to house more rail cars at the port, so they're not always blocking the railways, get them offline so they can, for some of them, repair. So the port does have a rail car repair shop. It will create about 15 more jobs, about 200,000 tons additional rail spur there. On the next slide, the return on investment on those couple projects, just on $15 million in general. This is once again Kevin Durazi, the state leading economist. 193 million in economic impact. That's up from 128. Total payroll impact is 105. That's up from 86 million. Extra jobs will be total impact, employment impact will be 228,000, and it's up from 1,400, and it'll be additional about 1.4 million tons. And the tonnage is huge because the Corps of Engineers have a set budget, and they allocate funding for the river based on the river's tonnage. So just by us continuing to invest in the port, it's going to allow for them to use some of their money to allocate more funds for dredging along the river and just maintenance for the docks. But right now, we're missing out on that money because of the tonnage. That's something we could easily do by just creating more opportunities at the port for additional import and export opportunities. On the post-COVID supply chain study, first I want to definitely thank you all in the county for working with us and funding this project for us. This is a study we partnered with Auburn University Supply Chain Department, Regional Planning Commission, and us. We have several participants. This is just a few that's listed. And this study basically conducts what are some of the challenges that the Port Authority has in the port itself. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you can relate to this. Our biggest challenge on the next slide is lack of awareness. You'll be amazed at how many companies do not know that we have a port. Birmingham Fastening is one. They're right down there on Dugan, on Avenue W. They're the largest Phillips head screwdriver and producer in North America, located in Ensley, Pratt City. They know we have a port, have access to rail connected directly to the port, and they can utilize it, especially with a lot of this office back onshore. So when we bring back companies to the States for manufacturing, and people are trying to realign their supply chain, understand that we have this rail infrastructure, understand that we have this port, that's a huge component, a huge selling point, and it's connected to the seaport, Mobile. Mobile has $1.5 million investment here lately. It's the fastest growing port in the country. By 2025, it's going to be the deepest port. They're about to deepen it to 50 feet. They have more calls now than New Orleans, and next going to be Houston. So when ships come from overseas, like Asia, they used to go to Houston, New Orleans, then come Mobile. So it wasn't a great selling point for companies when it comes to distribution, because that lead time is going to be like another 3 weeks. But now they're coming to Mobile first because of the Panama Canal. But once they hit Mobile's going to be landlocked here shortly. So what's the next spot's going to go to? They already extended the rail to Mobile, to Montgomery, to support the Hyundai plant, the Amazon plant. They have a cross-dock facility, but only Montgomery can do so much. They don't have the rail or the highway infrastructure that Birmingham has. They can't reach the population of the rest of the country like we can. So that set us up prime location for more business to come here, more tax revenue, and just take advantage of those opportunities. The second challenge we have is the lack of commodities, diversity. We're dealing in bulk. There's a lot of pig iron, coal, clinker, gypsum, oats, like oatmeal. There's a lot of oatmeal coming to the port from Canada. Trying to figure out how to do more containers, how to get more break bulk, just instead of just bulk, and diversify the portfolio. So if something happens to the economy, then we have ways to pivot, and those people are not going to be displaced. And lack of maritime certifications. There's not a federal destination out there to kind of help people to get those jobs. The federal government does have a program, and it just has not been an entity to apply for that. And that's something we're looking into, seeing how we can support the terminal operators with getting the right training on board so our citizens can take advantage of these jobs. These are great paying jobs. We're talking about coming out of high school, $53,000 a year. And I don't need to come out of high school with $53,000 a year. But nowadays, they definitely need it. It's a great opportunity to get employed, especially the cities on the west side that's right there located at the port. But once again, the port is connected to the rail, which is throughout the whole county. So it touches everybody's district, everybody's county footprint. So with that being said, not only are you going to have big jobs or extra opportunities in North Birmingham, you'll have on the west side, the east side, and on the south side. And kind of going to showing you the overview of the DECA grant, the economic impact of that. And this is something that our authority has led charge from on the state side, trying to corral all the inland ports, because we weren't the only recipients of that money. It was a $5 million pipe. We received $840,000. Decatur and Morgan received $2.2 million. Clark County, Lauderdale County, Greene County, Sumter County. Those are several people that received money, and it's not just concentrated in one side of the region of the state. It was throughout the whole entire state. So now we corral all the inland ports to go back and ask for that fund to be reallocated on a reoccurring basis. So we want to make sure that that money is going to be there. So once again, this is us trying to figure out other ways for funding. So we're just not asking the city and the county for money all the time. We have different pots. And then once they create that program, which Director Boswell said was a great program, all the money, it was 9 applicants, 8 got funded because they ran out of money. So it shows the demand, and it shows that $5 million deployed is going to return at minimum like $9 million in economic impact. So that was just from like on an annual basis. So going forward, it's going to be a huge opportunity for other ports and us to kind of look at and be more strategic on what we do for development. Or we know money's coming out of the pipeline, we can say, okay, we got this project on the shelf, we could possibly leverage this money coming down, use it to get a capital stack, new market tax credits, or even especially on the port side. So the port is eligible, once it qualifies the EDO, to apply for new market tax credit for only port authorities. That's another $5 billion that the administration, the current federal administration has put out there that does not compete with what the city's applying for. That's just more money that we can pull into the pot to do developments, to kind of help spread and leverage some of the revenues already coming in that we can actually help with economic development. And going back to the next slide, which is the Growing Alabama tax credit, having this opportunity to get site work ready, level out land, redevelop properties, just bring sites up to date, especially with the brownfield conversation that's going on, legislation. I think it passed the House last week. The state's going to hopefully have an incentive for people that own brownfields to bring that forth, have some cash to kind of help with the remediation process of some of that. Combining the Growing Alabama tax credit with the brownfield legislation is going to be a huge win for our region. You look at West Jefferson County, there's a lot of green space, but it's not a lot of developments because a lot of that stuff has contamination concerns. So if this is a concern, they're not incentivized to see if it's a real issue or not, because if they find out it's an issue, then they got to deal with it. So hopefully this program, this brownfield legislation will allow for them to be incentivized to bring that land forth. We could use economic tools like the Port Authority to kind of help support, bring some of this available land back online, push development, bring more jobs, and help out with that workforce participation rate also. And coming to the international port slide, just a reminder that it starts here in Birmingham, but doesn't stay here always. We're supplying a lot of countries, so our port is dependent upon not only just industry here locally, like a SIPCO, like U.S. Furnace and Fairfield, but it's other countries that depend on our port. Because of the metallurgical coal that we have, we try to transport. So once again, want to appreciate you all for your investment. Appreciate you all for continuing to be engaged with us. We would love you all to come out on another tour, especially when this warehouse is up. Groundbreaking, ribbon cutting ceremony, just kind of publicize. We will need help with that. So once the warehouse get up and running, we'd love to kind of help publicize what Birmingham has to offer from a logistics standpoint, especially banking on what the airport is doing with the air cargo shipping. All this stuff is going to intertwine together. And it's going to make us more competitive as a whole.
Very good. I know that Dr. O'Quinn has a question for you, Corey.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. In terms of the growing Alabama tax credit, my understanding is that you have to have a member of the state legislature sort of sponsor that application. Have you guys identified some?
So we're trying to identify the project first. So we are conversing with Norfolk Southern about their roundhouse to see if that's something they would like to put forth. We will have to have control of the property. And just getting coming to release property they've had for years, always a tough conversation. But them having the confidence in us that we will return it and showing them what we've done with Waco at the port. Once we get past that, I think we'll get somebody sponsor would not be that big of a challenge, I don't believe.
So have you been able to make contact with them or?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. The other question is what is the city of Birmingham doing to help reinvest in the port? So
currently we get 125.
$125,000.
$125,000. That's been our post-COVID funding. Pre-COVID was at $250. Having that, and this is why it would take us a long for us to finish the warehouse project. We just haven't had the funding. Like we're doing a $2 million project with $250,000. We got $250,000. We're leveraging that with that grant that we got from the state. We had to go and get a loan from the county to subsidize that grant until that was going to be reimbursed. Then use that, leverage that to talk to the people, to the WACO to have a P3 agreement and say that's going to be our commitment to the project. You all have to put in a risk. We're going to give you this money at this rate. Then that's how we got that 1.4 million in assets that we have now. That's just using $250,000. If we had $300,000 or just like additional $40,000, we could have easily had this project completed. Like our last issue right now is trying to figure out this the fire hydrant piece, and it's just a financial situation. Like they're saying it's going to be upwards of $150,000, but they got to go under the rail. As you can believe, there's not a lot of infrastructure outside at the port, even though it's in city limits. It's one of those things that got annexed in 1986, and that's pretty much it. This port does generate about $3 million in tax revenue to the city. So to reinvest about 10 to 20% of that into the Port Authority so we can help those terminal owners continue to develop, continue to operate, continue to expand. There's so much opportunity out there. Just having broadband, just having fiber, just having more warehousing. Warehousing is a phenom nationally, like especially in Alabama. I think we got like, if you could find 5% available, then you're doing an amazing job. So we just don't have enough warehousing in our region at all. And the port is most definitely. And that warehousing will allow the port to attract new operators. And especially with the conversation talking about EV, us having a viable port is going to make us a better candidate for EV station, EV opportunity, EV manufacturers. So just trying to think forwardly and see how we can be more competitive as a region.
And ARPA could pay for that fire hydrant.
Okay.
Because it's water.
It should qualify, yes.
So we can just get help with the fire hydrant right now. We'll be happy.
Any takers?
What do we have in the budget that I presented yesterday for the port?
It's 125.
Okay.
How much is the fire?
Very good.
They said 150. Yeah.
150.
This is gonna benefit us all. Everybody needs to be.
You go to council. Well, I do want to thank you. I know we appreciate the update and coming back and letting us know what's going on at the port. And I had a lot of interest in the progress of the warehouse and what you're trying to do with that project. During Alabama League of Municipalities, the Mobile Port had a presentation, and I just kept thinking about, what we're doing here in Jefferson County and Birmingham with our port and opportunities that we have there. They were very proud of what they're doing. And I'm just happy to see that you're falling in sync with some of the same things. You don't have the water inlet that they do, but the rail, I think they just kept stressing how that is truly beneficial. Did you find that same?
Yeah, the water piece is cool. It's a hidden gem. It's a great discussion subject, but the real development piece will come from the rail. Because we have 3 classes on the rails. One of those rail lines being BNSF. They service the whole West Coast. So you can service from Birmingham, you can touch Port of LA, San Diego, and Sacramento. And those 3 ports receive 45 to 40% of the country's imports. And BNSF is the first east that it comes. Birmingham is the first east that it comes. So Finley, to be more specific, is the first east connection to those ports. So that's where it stops, Finley. So you can come from Finley, hit Norfolk Southern, CXX, and serve the whole East Coast. And that's why you see, you go by Finley, see all those Teslas, that's in the one facility. And we can have something like that for different commodities, different products at the port, and expand upon that. So that's just one opportunity they have, and they're definitely being more aggressive. So BNSF has met with us about different potential opportunities, because they want to be more intentional about leveraging what they have as far as this rail line, because Georgia can't compete with that, Tennessee can't compete with that, Kentucky, Mississippi, no one can compete with us. We're the first east that they come. As for the state docks, they was here maybe 3 weeks ago. They came up to see the port. So they're definitely engaged. And we got to give them credit, because they are definitely keeping us in conversation and keeping us on the top of mind about, okay, well, with this opportunity on the pipeline, we're going to try to help direct something to Birmingham. They understand that Birmingham is going to be the key. We are the economic engine, despite what people think. I know they say Huntsville is the biggest city. We're the economic engine for the state. It's just, it is what it is. So just really relying on Birmingham, capitalizing on the infrastructure we have, the people that we have, and just really using that to leverage the whole state so we can be more competitive. So the port is local, but it's more of a regional conversation that we have when we're talking about the port.
Very good. Thank you so much. Any other comments, suggestions? I wish you had been available when the newspapers were trying to ask us, the media was asking us about the possibility of Birmingham losing another ranking and being the largest city. And all of it is still based on the economic development and those indicators and what we're doing on that side of the fence that really drives what your city is doing for the state and for the residents.
That's right.
Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, well, Councilor, we have no other questions. Do I have it? And Councilor Pro Tem does have something she'd like to share with us.
So we got the budget yesterday, and so if there aren't any objections, if we could send our budget questions for the mayor's office to them, to Jeff and Cheryl by next Wednesday night. This could give some leeway for people if they, procrastinate a little bit, so they have their questions answered to us after Memorial Day weekend, if that's realistic, Chief?
It's the 24th.
Yes. Or something like that.
Check out Friday night.
We'll say Wednesday, and then, we won't turn away if we say Friday night. That's why I said Wednesday.
So are you asking for the answers to be done before your public hearing, or?
Please.
Okay.
Is that realistic? Okay.
What was your answer?
Yeah.
Okay.
You gave me more than 2 days this time.
Well, I appreciate it.
All right, well, thank you for sharing that, making that request, Councilor Pro Tem. And if we don't have any other questions or comments, if I could just get a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.